Okay, this week we're going to be doing some oblique projection drawing. This is a continuation of our work from last week. So if you look here, obviously on lesson 3, page 5, it explains the basic principles behind turning a 2D shape into a 3D shape. And this is the very kind of beginning principles of it. We understand this, you've probably maybe done this many times before with cubes, just drawing a simple 45-degree line going back from the corner and making it into a cube. Now here's a simple explanation explaining that obviously when we draw lines back we cannot make them the same length as they are there because it looks like a rectangle. We need to half that length to make it look like a cube, and again you'll see that when we actually do this with the crating. Now again, once you've read through this and understood it a little bit, we're going to do the exact same thing we did last week. So exactly what we was doing before when we did our letters in the crating. So we're going to get some squared paper. We're going to do what we did last week. We're going to draw a 4 square by 5 square box and put them along your page. This week though, last week obviously I was saying up to about 7 letters. I only want you just to find a simple 5-letter word this week, and I'll show you why. We're going to be obviously turning them 3D using this oblique projection. The word that I've used this week is stone, simple 5-letter word there. Now I've done 2 different examples here and I'm going to show you in a minute why that is, because there's a slightly easier way of doing it or perhaps a harder way. It depends on how you treat it. So we're going to do the exact same thing as we did last week. So we start off with some squared paper. I'm going to draw some 4 by 5 squares. Now you'll notice here I've done 2 different versions of this. You don't have to do them both, just pick whichever one you think would work best. Some people prefer to put a space between each of these, so when you're making your letters 3D you can actually see the different angles going backwards. Some people prefer to put them side by side next to each other, and you'll have things like you see how the N tucks behind the E there, and obviously the O tucks behind the N there, and so on and so forth. The different letters will tuck behind each other. That's a little bit more natural as well. Some people find this easier, some people find it harder. Again, vice versa, some people find this easier or harder. You can pick whichever one of these you want to do. It's entirely up to you. I'll do a quick little example of the beginning of the both of them, the 2 here. So obviously starting from exactly like we did last week. So I've got my letters here as a reference, and I'm going to start off just by doing obviously the same word that I had before, 5-letter word stone. I'm going to start off with the S here. I'll do this nice and quickly because I covered this last week, so I don't want to spend too long on this, so it might be a little bit rough and crude, but just to basically show you our starting letter there, and that curves up like so. So the beginning of this is exactly like we did before. There's my S, just like before. I'll draw it down here as well to show you the difference of when we leave a space between the squares. Again, some people prefer to do that because they like to see the full 3D letter. Some people prefer to have them right up against each other so the letter's a little bit closer. Sometimes it looks a little bit awkward with the gap between them. Here, so we've got our starting letter there, just like we did before in the crating. Now what we're going to start doing here, I'll start with the one where it's got a space here because I can do the full letter on its own, and then I can show you what happens when there's a letter right next to it. So all we're doing here is we're going to go around the letter, and every single time the line changes direction, we're going to draw a 45-degree line out, basically a diagonal line across that square. So just like that, I'm going to draw a line from there to there, just 1 square, and there to there again, 1 square, there to there, 1 square, and then I'm going to join them up and make sure there's a parallel line from there to there. I'm going to do the same over here, parallel line from there to there. I'm going to do the same over here, the bottom corner down here, that line's going to go up and tuck behind the S there. When you get curves like this will be a little bit difficult. So you've got a straight line there and then it curves around. So from here, I'm going to draw a very faint line, very lightly there, and the bottom of them are curved very lightly because, can you see this curve here? I'm going to have a parallel curve right up there, like so. Again, that line there is going to be a parallel line here. This curve will curve behind the S, so I need to get the top of the curve and trace it up there and then curve that round. Oh, here we go, top of the curve there. Right at the top of that curve there's going to be a little 45-degree line, a very small and parallel and a slight curve there, like so. And as you can see, I've got my 3D letter S. Now on these examples down here, you're not going to have any problems with them overlapping. The next letter here, obviously, which will be a T. T is one of those really simple ones. I'll quickly smash that out right now. As you can see here, that's not going to be a problem at all. 45-degree lines coming up. If it's half, you'll find this halfway in a square will come up to halfway in a square. Be careful of that one. And again, 3D letter T, just like so. So again, those two don't overlap with each other. Up here, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So when we deal with that, again, looking at our same thing we've done with the letter S down there, I'm going to draw a 45-degree line straight up, like so. All those same points as I've already done there. I'm going to be a little bit careful though, because I'm getting into this point here, so I'm not going to do that part in the S, because you know what, before I do that 3 letter, I'm going to draw my T. In fact, it might be good to draw all of your letters out first in the same creating method that we did last week. And again, if you've forgotten how you did that last week, you might want to refer back to that. So I've got my S and my T here. Now I've got them, I can start obviously adding the 3D points in there, like so. Do the same there. Now that part of the T, you can see this part of the S, which we can see here, because I left a gap there. I've not left a gap here, so that tucks behind the T, so I'm just going to leave that. That's the top of my T going back there. That's the top of my S tucking behind the T there. I'm still going to have my curve up here, which is going to come round. This part here, you can see obviously this part of the S, it's going into that cube on the T, but that's fine. It does that, and in fact this T leaves a little bit of space. Now if that was a letter K or an L or an E or something like that, this will be tucked behind it, but we can actually see it here. So I'm going to extend that one out there and curve it up a bit. There's my straight line there. Same thing here. The curve starts from down there. It's going to curve out and round there. This is why I personally like having them next to each other, because it feels a little bit more natural the way that they connect to each other. Again, it gets a little bit more difficult when you have letters tucking behind each other. You've got to be aware I can't continue that T, because the next letter, the O, it might, well, it's actually not going to, it's going to curve out, so I will see that part of the T, but I'm not going to know until I've drawn the next letter. So again here, I'm just going to go around and check all of that. I've made that part 3D, yeah, that's it there. Have I missed anything? No, that curve's there. And then as I said before, I'm going to continue going here, so I've got this part of the O on the curve there and there, where that curves around. The little curves. So this is, well, I actually did 2 O's last week, if you remember, because I did my surname. So you should all have seen lots of examples of an O being done. And here we go. And now, in terms of making this one 3D, you're going to have a little bit of trouble here, because you'll notice there's a little curve on the inside. So halfway there will come up to halfway there at a 45-degree line. Halfway there, halfway there. So just be aware of that. There'll be a little curve in here then, and then straight up and straight across like so. Now as I neaten that up, you can see the 3D part of the inside of the O there. Same along the top, there's the straight part, straight for 2 squares there again. There's a curve coming out there. Again, I'm going to have a letter N in here, so the N's going to go like that, it's going to come out here. So a bit of that O is going to curve behind that letter, so that's going to disappear behind there. That's going to come up here, top of the curve, it's going to come up like that. Now the reason I didn't draw that part of the T is because, as you can see, it's going to go down and disappear behind the O, but not go all the way down to where it was there. A slight little piece is going to come up there, but as I mentioned before, the N is going to mostly cover this side of the O. Again, down here you're going to see the O is going to be perfectly visible, so when I do those curves, they come out. I'm rushing this a little bit just to show you quickly on the example there. Again, you don't have to do both, you can pick one or the other, whichever one you feel you're most comfortable with. You can probably tell from this example here which one you think will be better. Again, as I've said, some people find it easier to have the letters next to each other, some people find it easier to have a space between them. Entirely up to you. I'll give you that freedom there. So to make that choice. So that part there goes there, this comes up to here, that goes up to there. I'm doing this very quickly, I'm sure you'll see. Obviously take your time with it. I've been doing this for a long time now, so I can do these quite quickly and accurately. As you can see there, now again, this is one of those things I said you can see very clearly the edge of the T and the O, and there's even a little bit of a gap there where there's a space between them. As you continue and finish this off, eventually, once it's all done, it will look like one of those two. If you've done all of your letters next to each other, you should have that as your finished product in oblique projection. If you left a space between them, it should look like that. Have a go. Same as we did last week. Start off with your crating method. Once you've done your crating, or whatever your chosen word is, pick a 5-letter word, so for example like that. Do it all, take every single line back at a 45-degree angle, and you should be left with something like this. Once you're done, take a clear photograph of it, upload it to me, and I'll have a look. Okay.